Coffee with Joy. I'm so excited to have you all here. I am so excited to have my guests, Tanya and Jessica, as we talk about women in podcasts. Are you a future podcaster, or are you currently, you have a podcast? And you're probably wondering, how are two people really working together? How have they keep this longevity going? And how are they maneuvering through this world of podcasting when we know there's like so many, but not saturated, so many people in podcasts and people still trying to find their foot in their conversation? Well, my guests, Tanya and Jessica, has found their footing. So after these messages, we're going to talk to my guests, Tanya and Jessica, as we talk about women in podcasts. No fear. Advertise your business on our podcast. Connect with us, the Coffee with Joy Talk Show podcast, and let's grow together. Email us, and we surely look. Welcome back to Coffee with Joy. So excited to have you all here. So now I'm going to bring my guests on. So let's bring them on. Hey, Tanya. Hi, Jessica. How are you all doing?
Hey. Hi, how you doing? We're so happy to be here.
We are.
So excited to have you all here. So if you could please tell people, can you tell our guests a little bit about yourself, as well as just a little bit about your podcast? And then we'll jump right into our conversation.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm Jessica, a co-host of our podcast is called Girl Call Me with Tanya and Jessica. Tanya is the other half of this duo. And we really got started in podcasting because it felt very natural. It was truly the moments that we were on the phone or on a Zoom, and we were like, something seems off, and we'd like, girl, call me. And so we'd get off our call, and then we'd have a side conversation, and then those side conversations, probably our significant other or other people heard the other side of it, and we're like, you guys need to have a podcast or something. And I think we really this is during COVID, we were in our homes. Tanya and I met during COVID, I think probably over Zoom before we met in person, and we just found each other having conversations that we didn't hear enough in other spaces. And so whether that's professional spaces or personal spaces, we just really said, wow, there's something that both of us are gravitating to, and we think a lot of other people in our lives would too. And so we created this space for Black women, and for really any women, but we talk about issues that we know impact Black women. And yeah, the rest is not history. I mean, we've done a lot of work since then.
Not history yet.
It's not history.
Yeah.
But that's how we started, and we kind of haven't stopped since. And Tanya is really the engine that keeps me moving, and is always like, come on, we got to do more. And so that's what's really exciting about working in pairs, I think.
Yeah. And I'm Tanya, the other half that she just described. It's funny because I think many of us, particularly Black women, there is always a girl call me moment. There's always, whether you're at work and that microaggression, or that somebody said, oh, look at your hair or touched your hair, you're like, girl, call me because I need to tell you what happened. And so I think, as Jessica said, it really just started out as conversations that we were having, being remote workers and being in a situation in which sometimes you felt a little isolated. So those girl call me moments came out of that. And then we were like, you know what? Other people are having and need to hear some of these conversations. And whether it was, I'm the person that talks a lot about health, and particularly thinking about health equity. There's a lot of people out there who are not really thinking about those different tests that they need to do. And so that really is, in some ways, how we started thinking about, let's just start talking and sharing about things that people should know about. And, Jessica says I'm the engine, the choo-choo, but, she keeps us all, keeps me grounded and keeps me focused, because if it was up to me, we would have 14 episodes a day, and I'll be keep going and going. So it's good to have two people who actually come at things in very different ways. It's a good balance.
Oh, wow. So that's great to hear. So now, how do you all seem to work together? Because we know people, it's like a marriage, right? You have to make it work. Both parties have to make it work. If one is doing majority of the work, the other person will feel like, okay, hold up, you need to pull your weight. So how have you all decided to continue this road of saying, okay, you take this part or you take this part? How do you all continue this podcast as a duality working in your podcast?
I think when we started, both of us had different reasons for why podcasting
Mhm.
seemed really exciting. I had a really frank conversation with Tanya in the beginning. I used to work in marketing, and that is not my thing anymore. And I really did not want to get into something. I'm the one who like tries to hide on social media. So I
Yes.
was like, I do not want to take on a podcast if it's just going to be me doing more marketing. But what I do love doing is the storytelling piece of it. I love thinking about how the story unfolds and who our guest is and topics that are interesting. And so that's one thing I think both of us have really committed to, not forcing the other person
Mm.
creatively to
Mm.
go into a space that's going to feel
Yeah.
like not self-fulfilling, right? I think that is probably the most important thing. So Tanya loves, I think, not to speak for you, but I think she's gotten a lot of, I think she's really enjoyed the piece of getting to like tap into that creative side of her and
Mhm.
work in all of the graphics and the social media when I'm usually hiding. So that part is something I think that helps us keep going and stay out of each other's business, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, it's so funny because when we first started, I was trying to convince Jessica, you need Facebook, you need Instagram. How about you unlock that back? And it was like, do I have to? I'm like, yes, I need you to have some social. I need you. And so, but then it was, to me, I think Jessica's really right, because for me, I have never had the opportunity to sort of tap into my creativity in
Mm.
this way, and in some ways I can be like guarded in some ways. And I think this sort of vehicle has allowed me to sort of step out, um kind of turn on a different side of my brain, and it's been really exciting to do. And yes, Jessica, I will say I'm probably bigger picture in some ways. Jessica really is really amazing at the details, and so when I'm like doing something, it's helpful to have someone that's like, let's focus on this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she'll bring me down, and I'm like, oh yeah, we have to talk about the time or something like
Right.
that.
When Tanya's like usually trying to like produce season 5 when we're in season 2, I'm like, girl, slow
Right.
down.
Girl,
Let's talk about next week and
yeah,
let's try to get ourselves in. Remember what we talked about last week. Let's
right,
still do that this week.
right.
But I think you need that. I mean, I would not be able to. Tanya told me really early on when we did a lot of research about podcasts and kind of the
Mhm.
longevity piece of
Yeah.
podcasts. And
Mhm.
um, we talked to someone who said, like, just keep going. If you feel like no one's listening, if you
That's
feel
good.
like you don't have listeners yet, just keep going and have that consistency. And so I think having two people that has been really helpful, because there's sometimes, I mean, life is lifing, right? So there's been times in my life, lots of them in the past 6, 7, 8 months, where I'm like, I can commit to showing up like for a record, and like that is it. And then Tanya leans in, and I think in other places, like
Ah,
Tanya's like, hey, you got to pick up the slack here. And so I think it's also recognizing that we're doing this to share
Mhm.
part of who we are, and part of that needs to be like authentic and real, and
Yeah.
not feel forced, right? Because the product then feels forced.
and
Yeah.
remember why you're doing it. I think that was the biggest part, is that we
Mhm.
sometimes, we can get all the accolades, we can get modest, all that stuff. But I think sometimes people focus on, I need to monetize, I need to do this, I need to do that. No, but why are you really doing this? If you're really doing this because you want to share your story and support and help your community, that's a different thing. The
Yeah.
other things will come if
Yeah.
you really just focus, because I think that's when, if you don't know why you're doing it, that's when
Mhm.
you really, I don't think it's the longevity doesn't stay.
Yeah. And I think too, what people fail to understand is it's the planning. People don't want to plan. They're ready to execute. You have to plan, then prepare. Meaning that and I'm a firm believer of that. Because even when people look at my page, I have somebody say, hey, so who's your team?
Right. That's what
The
right.
lamp.
Like literally who does
Right.
a well job, right? And a little fake real orchids, right? Literally. But someone said it. But to me, I took it as a compliment. That means I am doing something right, because again, it comes with the planning. It comes with the planning, then prepare. Meaning that, okay, what is my end goal? And the
Mm.
end goal doesn't mean this is it. Because it's like going to college. You got your degree. That's the end goal. But now you got it. Now you have to be prepared for the next goal. Your goal is the height. The standard is your level. So making sure that your platform, because even reaching out to you all or reaching out to anyone, I want to make sure that I have the aesthetics of me. It's not to please anybody, it's please me, knowing that I set my best foot forward, making sure coffee with joy is presented. And people
Mm,
don't understand all of that aligns. But again, it comes with the plan. Okay, what color do I want? What is my signature? What is my understanding? What is the confirmation? What is the information that I'm sending out? What do I want this to look like? What is that I'm not going to take? I don't want any and just anybody on the show, because again, was X
Right.
amount of billion people on the earth. I only just want just a few. But at the same time, I'm asking God, okay, how do I direct this? What
right.
direction do I want to go? And how do I stay creative? Because I'm human, right? And that you two are blessed. And I pray, keep in mind, I say, Lord, if you're willing, one day, if you're willing, do send the help. Because, like I tell people, I don't brag to say I do this alone. It's not that. But what I am saying is that you got to fight for your dream. The dream becomes the reality. Because,
Yeah.
again, either I quit or I keep going. But I love this so much. I'm telling you, I could eat this up all day. I can eat this up all day, but I take it in stride because I'm human. Sometimes my mind is like, I don't want to work today. But
Right.
it's really, when you're in the podcast, you have to be prepared for your information. What is that you want to spill out? What is it that what is your main focus? What is that? Because I don't have a niche, right? Mine is normalizing a difficult conversation, meaning that everywhere, everything starts with a conversation, whether with self or with someone. It starts with a conversation, because in order for us to drive to the next level, we have to bring it. So you all here, women in podcasts, be able to show, hey, how did you all get started? Even though people can research, sometimes listening to people who actually going through it, who just started or probably a year or two in, be able to understand, okay, wow, okay, they have it together. But I don't need all this, because again, companies are meant to sell all these equipment that you don't understand, all these apps, right? But again, it comes with planning, and you really have to have sub areas. What do I want my format to go? What does it look like? And people need to understand that. So with all of that, how did you all decided that this is our, I know, Jessica, you're not, the marketing is not there. You're like, X that out. Yes, we got to
Yeah.
go. We got to go.
Not
But
not sparking joy. Not
yeah,
sparking.
that's part of it. Because again, when you don't have that top notch, how are you marketing? How are you putting your things, how are you putting yourself out there with the free things that you're able to use, your website, your email,
Yeah.
your social media,
Yeah.
right? At least I have something I can present, and hopefully,
Right.
the good Lord decide, okay, here's your revenue, right? But
Yeah.
how do you all decide, okay, this is and of course, we can always rebrand. But at this first time, you all decided to have this logo, this tone, this color. And how
Yeah.
do you all go about your conversation as you all decide when you go weekly or bi-weekly? How do you all set your whole podcast up?
Yeah. I mean, I think at first, and we really probably recorded almost 6 months. It took about, I would say, 6 months, even more, for us to really say, okay, what's the first thing? We need to know, what's the platforms? Let's research all of the platforms that exist and which ones work for us.
Mhm.
Logo. What is our logo? What is our brand? What is our color story? What do we want to talk about? Let's test it. There was a few that we recorded that may have not seen the light because we were like, oh, we ain't talking about that today.
Right.
But
Right.
there was so much that went in, I think, on the front end. And I think goes back to your point, Joy, is
Mhm.
that the plan and really outline what you want your
Mhm.
voice to be. Jessica?
Yeah, I mean, of course, there is the aesthetic piece. And I think from a brand perspective, like my background has been in brand. And so I think I had better feelings probably there, like aesthetically, what we needed to look like. I think to Tanya's point on tone and voice, that was probably the most challenging for me because
Mhm.
I told you I don't really have like a social platform.
Yeah.
Um, but I talk a lot to a lot of people, probably tell too many people my business in my personal life.
Yeah.
And so I had a really hard time, and I think Tanya too, when we first started, of figuring out how much of ourselves do we want to share. We want this to be authentic, but we also don't want all our business out there. We don't want to talk about our jobs. We don't want people, like, so how do we balance that? So
Yeah.
for us, I think from a brand perspective, most of our time was focused on tweaking that brand voice and the tone, which I think is really important. I think that there is that's probably one of the things that people do overlook. I mean, you may come up with your podcast checklist and you got all the, like you said, Joy, you got the mics, you got the computers, you got the headsets, you got all the stuff that costs all this money, but you haven't done the work to figure out, what do I really want to say? What don't I want to say? What's too much? And what do people want to hear? And I think for us, not only did we did a couple episodes and then we were like, girl, there is no way, mostly
No.
me. I was like, no way
Girl,
that's
no.
going
It
anywhere.
was
Like,
girl, no. It was girl,
I
no.
don't even want to listen to it again. Like that, I feel shame or embarrassment or whatever. But also, we then had a close circle of friends like really early on.
Yeah.
And we just started sending them our episodes before we posted them anywhere and said, not only like, would you listen to this, but friends who we knew, our best friends, who would give us very direct feedback about, you're doing too much here. Why don't you talk about this? To the point now that some of our friends who listen are like, I'm learning stuff about you that I never thought that
Oh,
you would
yeah.
talk about. So I think that tapping into that voice from a podcast perspective is so important, because everybody, otherwise it's just talk radio and like you're reporting the news and you're not telling. I hate to sound like trite with storytelling, but truly then you're not really telling a story, you're just reporting the
Yeah.
news. And for us, particularly as we were focusing on our guests and wanting to bring a lot of Black women on who are experts in their field or lead their communities and allow them to share their voice and feel comfortable and maybe in a space that they haven't before, we felt like it was really important to kind of cultivate that community beforehand. So we spent a lot of time there. And that's why when Tanya, I don't even know how long we've been recording this, because truly we recorded for like 6 months before we pushed publish. And I think I hid under my covers like the
She hides
entire
every
day.
time, probably.
As soon as we published, I was like, oh my God. I'm walking around acting like every person I see on the streets, like, she's the one, she's,
Really,
that's
not
not the case, but that's how it feels. But I think it's a testament to really getting your voice down and what do you want your brand to stand for?
Yeah. And do you ever find yourself that now that you all are in the water, you're submerged, you're in,
You're in
have
it.
you have doubts, or have you ever thought about, have you ever came in internally to say, you know what, we got a recourse. This is not the way that we really wanted to go. Because after we, of course, sorry, friends, they became our trial and error, our little, not to call you all mice, but I've been there. I know. They
Right.
became my little test buddies, But now that you're in the water, you're saying to yourself, have that ever happened where you say, we need a recourse. This is not the way that we plan on going. Have you ever had any doubts or doubts and you know what? No, we like it and we just move forward. Have any of those doubts or any misconception in your head where you're here and things have gone, but you know what? We're still going to ride. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah.
Well,
The answer is going
without,
to be different. The answer is
yeah.
going to be different for both of us.
I mean, I was going to say without going too far down a political path. I mean, I think this administration has been a place for me where I'm like, I really need to am I really going to be worrying about the type of descriptions we write in Spotify because someone's going to pick out our podcast out of nowhere because we're Black and we call ourselves Black women and now we're a DEI podcast and we're a threat to somebody, right? So I certainly have had external factors or even just certain topics that get too close. I don't, I said I share a lot with everybody, but I kind of don't. So there's been certain topics where I'm like, do I really want to have this conversation on air? And then that means I have to have it with these 3 people in my life too. So for me, it's been external environment where I've had to really check in. I love what we do and I love what we create. And there's been no ever any creative doubt there. It's more for me about managing kind of the pieces around me of what the consequences, if you will, of like putting our voices out there.
Yeah, I lived through, it's funny because I stay pretty confident in that, sometimes I'm like too confident. I would argue that's that Caribbean in me. But
Where?
Jamaica.
My family's from Jamaica. Yeah.
Listen, this is why you and my sis. This is why. Come on, Joy. We'll have to talk about where Mandeville. Where are you? We'll talk about all the time. But but I think that for me, sometimes I'm surprised. I've been surprised that we're actually doing well. Because I think sometimes we as women, particularly as we as women of color, don't always realize how good we are and really give ourselves the flowers and the shine that we should be. And so there have been times in which I'm like, we overthought a lot of things in the beginning. I think overanalyzed, overthought, got, and really was like, oh God, was this good? Did this sound good? Instead of just going, you know what, we're going to release this and really release this and allow. And I think once we really, and I think now, I think third season, I feel like we were kind of coming into our stride, not overthinking, just enjoying it, not over planning every single corner. And I think that if that's the one thing I tell people is, yes, have a plan, think about it, have your voice, but sometimes just try.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then hone in and figure out some guests, maybe some topics, sure. But and I think we know who we are in our voice.
Right. Wow. So after these messages, we're going to continue to talk to Jessica and Tanya. They said a mouthful about podcasting. So please do share. If there's any questions or comments, please do leave them below. I know for a fact they will surely get back with you all. So after these messages, we're going to continue to talk to Tanya and Jessica. How do they work together and what is coming in the near future? So please stay tuned. Get my words right, people. Make sure that you hit the PayPal QR code and so that you can find out more about these Q sets and so much more. Let's get to working out. Welcome back to Coffee with Joy. So now I'm going to bring my guests back on. Hey, Jessica. Hey, Tanya.
Hey, girl. Hey.
People need
to understand. Jamaican family. I love
it. Yes.
Oh,
yes. That part, right? Mm-hmm. So now you're here. You're in your podcast. You got everything. You're going fine. Now, are you all virtual? Or are you going to continue to be virtual? And what is the goal to be in person? And how do you go about getting your guests? Because I think a lot of people suffer with you can get any guest, but getting the guest that fits your platform. How do you all go about getting that guest? And do you all plan on to continue to be virtual and or being in person? And what does in person look like for you all?
Yeah. Go ahead, Tanya.
I was going to say, we've done a mixture. We've done interviews in person. We've done interviews virtually. Honestly, sometimes virtual is easier. Yeah. I think that, when you think about a studio and the equipment and making sure you have the editor and making, we've done all of that. But as far as how we get our guests, I think it's just different ways, right? Yeah. I will say our first guest on the podcast, I think I said, girl, could you come over to this and show up? And it was really one of my good friends. Yeah. She's a faculty member. And she really talked about stress and the impact of stress on our brain. And we didn't have a plan.
I was going to say, meanwhile, could I just interject here and say most stressful. It's funny that the topic was stress because it was the most stressful episode we've ever done because you heard Tanya early talk about details. She doesn't think about them. And so she was like, oh, it's going to be great. We got this studio. We're going to show up. And then we get there and she's just like, okay, Jessica, you're good, right? And I'm like,
how do we use this equipment?
I don't know what we're doing. This is our first time. Like, this is your friend. Like, we jumped in way too fast. But I would say that, like, you got to have that, right? If you're not afraid, if you're not scared, if you're not doing something that, like, gets your energy going, maybe not that much, but gets your energy going, like, that's the whole point of learning. I think I'm in this chapter of my life saying that I really want to be a student more. And so this podcast, what's really been fabulous is being able to be a student and learn. So yeah, I think for us, like, we're not incredibly deep into the tech. So for us, virtual works a lot easier. There's a lot of platforms that make it pretty easy. We're both in Los Angeles. Most of our guests have been Southern California-ish, but we have folks all over. And that makes it really easy for us and them to jump on. I think the other thing that for us, to Tanya's point about not needing to be experts, part of what the experts we bring on are people who are so established in their field mostly Black women, all Black women, and you would not believe how many of them, we're talking published books, 3 or
Mhm.
4 degrees, and they've never been on a podcast before. And so it for us, that this has been the most meaningful piece of our work for me is
Yeah.
getting other women the platform and getting them confident in this platform too, because they should be out there just like all their other counterparts are on all different types of shows. And so I think the virtual makes that a lot easier. We all know we have way too many jobs, most of us. And so this is makes it a lot easier if we can cram it in on someone's lunch break. I mean, we've done doctors who are on their lunch break
Yeah.
in their office in scrubs. Like if we can fit it in, that makes it a lot easier for people than having to go to a studio and take a whole day off.
Yeah. And I asked that because, I've had the question asked, how do you go about getting your guests? How do you seek your guests? And low key, even though I suggest, yes, people, I want you to go on my website and look for it, sign to be a guest. But I do find it better when I find them, only
Yes.
because it cuts out all that preliminary stuff, right?
Right.
Because again, if you utilize social media, and again, social media we know started back for grandma, because again, grandkids moved away, became a digital photo book. But now we know we moved away from that. It's more like, hey, it's a business. It's a virtual business for many people. But if what you're doing, you're putting your best foot forward in what you're doing. So if you're a chef, what do you put in? You put in your food out there, right?
Right.
If you are a trainer, you put in your train out there because you want people you soliciting this to your clients. So you already spoke what I don't need to sit here and research. It's
Right.
already there, and I could definitely define, So I prefer to go that route by looking at social media and to really pick it up. But
Yeah.
a lot of people still like, how do you go about it? Of course, it's a whole process, right? But just trying to stay abreast. And I tell people, you got to live in the future, meaning that, look, we already in the 3rd month of the year, and next when we wake up, it's going to be 4th of July, So it's like you have to have that
Right.
bull by the horn and really
Right.
stay in that planning stage if you don't have multiple people working with you, right? And really be able to work with people agenda, people work with people time, and you have to be flexible, right? Just to make sure that your podcast doesn't lose its foot or its grind.
And controlling, right? It's about
Yeah.
controlling your
Mhm.
narrative. And sometimes that does mean making you picking the guests,
Correct. Yeah. Yeah.
and not and yeah, I mean, we've taken definitely different people, but I think they've all worked. But I
Mhm.
think it's best if you're like, like this season, we're talking a lot about community. So
Yeah.
that is centered around who are we wanting to bring on this season that's going to really tap into that community, where spiritual community, whether it's hair salons,
Yeah.
whether it's, so many different aspects of community that we can tap into.
And like you said about the control, right? And you still have that wiggle room, but at least I know my platform is running the way that I want it.
Right.
Of course, you can do it however you see fit, but I'm still able to have that control where I'm able to make sure that the aesthetics, everything match and align with Coffee with Joy. And I think people need to understand that when doing a podcast, it's at the beginning, it's a lot of work. I could tell you how to do it, but until you get into it, it's a different ball game. Because what is may not be what you think it is, right?
Right.
Because a lot of people think you just grab a mic and you just start talking, but hey, it's not that easy. Now you two been working together for a while, right? Is there anything that you would like to share with somebody who probably they are a partner or a try? What is one thing that what keeps this pair glued together? Because I think people look at people and say, oh yeah, they working together. How are they doing it? How are they doing this? Not knowing that, hello, you're talking to two human beings. No man on this earth does not have problems. So
Right.
how do you two work together to really gel? And not to go into detail, because everybody don't need to know your business, right?
Right. When I coming for the next.
Yeah.
We ain't going into too much detail
Yeah.
because God hasn't called me yet to be transparent. And I think that's
Girl,
when you
yes.
start talking your business and the people come back, you should never told the people. That's number
Right.
one. God didn't ask
Love
you to
it.
play Joseph. He didn't tell you to go tell them, interpret nobody's dreams and interpret yours. Stay
Okay,
still.
Joy, come through with it.
Come on, sis. Let me tell you. If y'all don't know, sister, like, here, what? I talk to God like I'm talking to y'all right now. Let me tell you. No, heavily.
Listen.
And this is by the grace of God how far we've gotten. And we'll talk offline about how everything is. But it's just when people work together, I work with some people, and I just don't like the lack. I don't like. I oh my God. I am like LeBron James. Like especially I'm an educator by day, right? I don't like to lose. And when
Right.
I know I can get the upper hand, and I'm not looking for plan B. We're working plan A. We're doing everything in our God-given power. We're going to work plan A. If we set this down and work accordingly, we're going to work plan A. Some people always look forward to plan B and plan C. The question is, did you really work plan A? And when you're working with people, yeah, I must say I'm the one that's sitting at the table. Let's delegate. Yeah, let's work together. Yeah, we get deep, we go further, but you two work together, and you guys seem to do so very well, of course, on the outside. What is one thing that you would like to share with of some people who are working in pairs or try? What is one thing to keep them together no matter what? And you just have some think time, because we don't have to rush right into the answer. We got some think time. The people need to know, it's serious. It's serious. A lot of people start together. Hence Destiny Child.
Oh, right. Every group that broke up.
And look what happened. Somebody soar. We talking about eagles. Somebody looking like duck, crow, no shade, no tea. But that's what happens. You grow. Some people just don't grow. Some people just don't share the same values anymore. It's a whole lot. But what keeps you all to this day and prayerfully and beyond together?
I think I would say being direct with each other. I think being honest about what brings us joy about this work that we're doing together, and then going back to that. I think for me, like I know in working with Tanya what really makes her tick, and it is not the same as me, and the frequency in which she wants to talk about the podcast is not the same as me, and the episodes that I like are not necessarily episodes that she likes. And I think that's okay if we're direct about it, right? Like, I'm not going to fake the funk. I'm not going to pretend I like something when I don't like something. I'm not going to pretend something's comfortable for me if it's not, because then, like, when we come up against things or rub up against something, we both understand why. And we can get to the answer a lot faster because we both understand why. So for me, having a partner and someone who I can just be really direct and honest with, is the only way I could do something that feels sometimes really vulnerable and also is a grind. It's not our everyday work, and it's something that I have to want to show up for. So it's a commitment that I've made, and it's something that I think that we share.
Yeah. I mean, most good groups break up because of bad communication. Yeah. And I was saying, or somebody decided, temptations. Rough. There's always something, the egos or something. But I think that for us, the communications are like key. But I also think that, and direct communication. Jessica will be like, I'll send her some graphics I sent, and she'll be like, girl, why does this look so bad? And I'm like, okay, thanks for coming for my neck. I thought this looked good. I thought this sounded good, but it's okay. I'm like, fine, let me change it. And then, but I think that I'm not gonna take it deep being personal. I'm like, we need to be successful. We are trying to do this together. The other thing is, sometimes social media, I'll post something and I'm like, this just fell flat. Or Jessica will come up with an idea and we'll post it. And next thing you know, we go viral. And I'm like, no, you didn't. I need you to come back from the marketing caves, because I need you to take over. So I think that the wins equal the balance, and kind of keeping that communication going and testing and knowing that it all goes back to knowing why you're doing this, right? And and making sure, like, I think before we launched our pod, we had a check-in meeting. Go, are you still happy? Am I still happy? What do we want to do? What do you want to do? Why are we doing this? And I think making sure you're checking in with each other to make sure we're on the right path.
I'm just thinking about, I put check-in on the agenda for that meeting, and Tanya was like, what do we need to check in about? What do we need to? I was like, look, let's just have the moment where we both check in. But I think I do think that honest communication and being direct and knowing why your partner is excited about this work is really important.
And picking well.
I'm sorry. Even doing that, it may just seem well. And I
Yeah.
was
You
seeing
might see
someone
one,
go,
you're like, wait, red flag? Yeah,
yeah,
you're not doing it. You're not showing up. You're, not being reliable. Those are keys because I
yeah,
can't work with someone who's not reliable. That's a thing for me. I'm like,
yeah,
we're showing up. We have to show up. We have to do this together.
yeah. It's a
And
true,
pick the lanes, whatever lanes it is. Make
yeah.
sure you pick the right lanes and you can move that forward.
Wow. And just to be able to identify, like you said, being direct in the strong communication, effective communication, right? Just to really make sure. And I think that's just the key. If anybody were to take away, I truly agree with being direct and the effective communication. And
Mhm.
don't let nothing fester, because
Mm.
as soon as you do that, it becomes an issue. And
Yeah.
don't let people get in your ear.
Mhm.
That's a man, of course, it's the endless, but of course, this is what drives, Girl Call Me podcast. But it's endless. And you have to be strong, you really have to be 10 toes down. And if you're serious,
Yeah.
really drive it home, you really have to be serious. So, as we bring the podcast to a close, what is something that keeps you all going, and you can answer individually,
Mm.
life is life.
Ooh.
Much I don't know the statistics, but if I had to put it out there, I want to say 98.2% people who do podcasts, they work full time. Yes, yes.
Right.
98.2. I like the 98.2.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I'm pretty much sure. I may be a little decimal off, but I'm pretty much sure I'm up there.
Right.
Get back with me in 3 weeks. I'm gonna
I
check
will.
Forbes or something.
Chat. Right.
But life is not going to stop life, right? But what keeps you all going through prayer, affirmation, scripture, or just self-care? What keeps you going in
Mm.
order to yourself to drive the podcast? Because you both are in the vehicle together, but we both have to be we both GPS, we both the driver, and we're both going. But what keeps you individually going to know that I see the end goal, but I gotta work now to get there.
Mm.
Mhm.
Um, I have a deep commitment to community,
Yeah.
and for me, anything I do has to be about um, strengthening a community of which I'm part of. And so for me, this opportunity to elevate Black women's voices,
Yeah.
to help empower, to help educate, to help demystify, to help people just feel seen and heard is what drives me.
Mm.
Yeah. I think that's similar in a sense of, when we started this, we talked about this podcast is for, by, and about Black women.
Mhm.
And, our voices aren't always, we're not always, sharing our voices. We're not always hearing from those amazing doctors creating and doing incredible work in their community. And so for me, that brings me so much joy listening and hearing our incredible women in our community. And then I will say the people who are not in our community,
Yeah.
the people who are not in our community just going, wow, I didn't know. I didn't hear. And I'm learning. People who are white men reaching out to me going, I learned so much from your podcast and I'm loving it. I'm loving. Can I listen? I'm like, am I okay to? I'm like, please listen.
Yeah.
Please listen.
Yeah.
And so that brings me so much joy. And I will say that, Jessica and I talk about being, Jessica's a soft life vixen. And, and I'm a self-care lover. I love self-care. And I think remembering to kind of pour into ourselves. I think we all need to make sure we're pouring into ourselves as much as we're pouring into other people and other things. And, and just finding joy, and then remembering how to find joy in this. Right now, I find joy in doing this podcast, and Jessica brings a lot of joy. And, I'm very grateful to be doing this podcast with her.
Wow. I look forward to seeing. Now, any plans in the next 5 years? What do you all take with Girl Call Me? Because I see this Girl Call Me. Girl Call Me.
Girl, we will. We just, yes.
Call me. Where do you all see yourself in the next 5 years, 10 years?
Wow. I think I think that there is one, I think it's really important. You mentioned kind of how many people have podcasts in the beginning. So I think for us, continuing to stay in 5 years, I'd hope that whatever platforms exist, that
Right.
we're finding a way to bring this type of content to people in the way that they're taking it in right now. There's some people who've been listening to podcasts since 2011 when podcasts really first started, or there's some people who are like, what's a podcast? So we obviously have, we could be out doing podcasts for 5 more years, but I think our goal is also to make sure we're keeping pace with where content and how content is being delivered. So for me, that's important, that we're just always thinking ahead, always thinking about, what is robot AI Jessica gonna say that's different than just kidding. That's different than this Jessica. But no, truthfully, I think just thinking about how I just think there's a lot of opportunities, and I think some of them we don't even know yet. But yeah, so I think just finding more ways to share our voice.
Yeah, and I think the Girl Call Me retreats and all the other stuff we talked about, doing some, exploring places outside of our comfort zones, and bringing in. I think I will say that the collaboration with people like yourself, Joy, and other community. I mean, I think more and more of that in the next 5 years. Figuring out how we're all in this together.
Yeah.
And how can we continue to support each other and continue to do good work together in order to move this needle forward? So yeah. So, no big, huge plans in 10 years, but I'm excited to see where these things go in the next,
Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
Jessica and Tanya, thank you all so much for being on.
Thank you.
It is truly amazing. I've learned so much through y'all. I'm so excited that you all answered the call to be on Coffee with Joy. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And thank you all for being here on Coffee with Joy. Please make sure that you like, subscribe, and follow Coffee with Joy. If you would like to patronize our company, please make sure that you follow the QR code that is on our page. Any amount will help. And please, if you're starting a podcast, they gave away some gems, but you must do the research. You must go out, but you must have a heart for it. Anyone can do a podcast. I look forward to seeing what you all do. Please make sure that you leave your comments, your questions, your desires, or just a note below. I know for a fact Tanya and Jessica would love to hear. If it's a weekday or a weekend, it is Coffee with Joy. Until then, you all have a blessed night. Have a good night.